Well, hey there, everybody. It's Dr. Drake 63 here again today. Thanks for joining me. You might see that I'm wearing hunting blaze orange shirt here because it's deer hunting season somewhere. What we're here to talk about today is my philosophies about home defense. And I want to make it real clear what this video is not before you spend or invest too much time invested in it, waiting for some kind of a punchline or definitive answer from me. Number one, this is not a training video, okay? I am not a qualified trainer in any way. I don't have any kind of background in this, in law enforcement or house-to-house combat in the military or anything of that nature. So please keep in mind, this is not a training video. Number two, this is specifically home defense philosophy that I'm going to be speaking to today. So this is not concealed carry. This is not car defense. This isn't perimeter defense. This isn't military style, this or that. Guys, we are specifically only going to be talking about home defense. And in my particular situation, talking about suburban home defense. And that's going to have a lot of different considerations that somebody living out in the country with their nearest neighbor being a mile away and so forth. So keep that in mind. And what I will talk about is my philosophy. And when I say philosophy, I'm talking about tools of the trade. I'm talking about any potential weapon that I might pick up to defend my home, to defend my family, defend myself. So we'll get into that. Before we get too far into that, I would just like to say this. The best scenario, if you can do it, is to have a dog that's going to bark if somebody tries to get into your house in the middle of the night, because none of us can stay awake all night. We got to sleep sooner or later. I'm a pretty sound sleeper. But I have a dog that's going to hear things that I'd never hear. And even though occasionally that means you get woke up for no reason, at least you've got that going on. Now, for those of you that might have big dogs, German Shepherds, Rottweilers, dogs that can be used to actually attack a person, in that particular case, I can't think of a better situation than having somebody greet the would-be intruder at whatever entrance they are to your house. It would be a horrible thought to think you could lose your dog in that situation, but your dog's sacrifice might result in you living versus not by the amount of time that could buy you. So something to think about. If you can get a dog, they can do a lot of that work for you, because hell, all they do is sleep all day anyway. This dog would be more likely to bark when people left. Is that not correct? That is correct. Anyway, look what we have here. It's an AK. And I can't tell you, because I have an interest in this type of firearm, I can't tell you how many things I read where people view something like this as a suitable home defense gun. You know, size-wise, something like this is easy to maneuver. We'll give you that. And somebody's going to say, but hey, man, there's a bunch of specialized ammo for these things that, you know, frag and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, right. For the most part, people are firing FMJ out of these things. And this bullet right here is going to leave my premise. You see that birdhouse back there? Goes through that, probably takes a right at the tree and goes into the neighbor's house back there. Intermediate rifle rounds for home defense, if you are obeying the laws where you live, and that's a big caveat, are not the best scenarios because they will leave your premises. And most of us who live in the suburbs are 50 yards or less away from our neighbors. So, again, if this is all I had and I was being attacked, yeah, I mean, better than nothing. But there are better things, and we'll get into that. This is a simple 6-inch straight blade. I actually did a short video about knives. I don't pretend to know a lot about them. I know this one. I've used the heck out of this thing camping, so forth and so on. Cut open cans with it, use it as a can opener. bottom line is you don't have to spend a ton of dough. You can get something like this under $40 if you really wanted to. But what's nice about this is just the word handy comes to mind. You actually have the ability to grab something like this. It doesn't take up a lot of room. A lot of people aren't going to be freaked out about having to have a biometric gun safe in order to grab a 6-inch blade. And to be honest with you, that's what would probably help you in most of the scenarios of getting your door kicked in the middle of the night. But obviously you don't want to be that close to anybody. If we're talking about pistols, which would probably be my favorite scenario for inside the home defense, then this pair right here does the trick for me. They're both in 9mm. They're simple firearms. I'm not here to say, well, you should grab these Glocks instead of a Smith & Wesson. Grab whatever that you know to be a reliable firearm, and pick a good round. Now, I don't have young kids living in my house. When I go to bed at night, I have the option of a true nightstand gun. Would I put this light or any light like it, a true glow, this is obviously a real super low cost thing, would I put this on a pistol? The answer is no. And the reason is real simple. I'm going to get to that in a minute on my philosophy of light, which almost sounds like some kind of a foundation. But before I talk about that, I just want to talk about ammo. This is the Hornady Critical Duty. If you notice here, it's a hollow point, but there's a nylon insert here. If you can see that, and what that does is prevents premature expansion. And why that's important is, especially if you're shooting at somebody that's got a thick coat on or something like that, it buys you a little bit more time and gets you a little bit deeper penetration. So something like this is a very, very effective self-defense round. There's no question about it. And it's going to frag. I've used this stuff to dispatch deer that needed to be mercifully put down while hunting. And it goes in one side and completely frags. It does not leave. I've never seen, even at very close range, one of these rounds leave a deer's skull. Like I said, after you've used it in the humane kill situation. So anyway, why is ammo important when we're talking about this stuff? Well, if you look at the way most houses are built, and mine certainly is, this right here is just a sandwich right here. And what it is drywall. There's a stud and there's some siding there on the other side. And that's it. So something that's going to frag is important, but to be honest with you, I've actually shot this like through drywall sandwiched with a 2x4, and it's still going pretty quick. I mean, the difference between all the way across a long room or up close might have something to do with it too, but drywall does not prevent much of a problem in defeating something, and that's why I like to look at something like this. This is a bird load. So again, I'm looking at ammunition first, and we'll talk about firearms second, because it's 12 gauge bird load. It's what you'd use for a pheasant. Or a grouse or something like that. It's 7.5 shot of 1 1/4, and this stuff, inside a normal house is not going to pattern very wide. This stuff is meant to pattern out at 30 yards, 40 yards, stuff like that. So, your diameter is not going to be that big. So this is going to be a real lethal shot at anybody. It's sure as hell going to stop them. And that's why when you hear people talk about, well, hey, you got bird shot or whatever, believe me, a round of this in the midsection, really anywhere, is going to be so devastating. And that's why I'd look at something like this. This right here. Now, this is a side-by-side shotgun, okay? Double barrel, as we used to call it. And if you look at it, what you'll notice is it's a cheapie that I bought. You can see on the end there's a little separation between the two barrels. That had a little aluminum piece soldered on. Now this does have a safety on it. So double barrel, short barrel. I guess if you wanted to use an NFA type of scenario, you could get yourself a legal short barrel shotgun for home defense. But the deal there is you're really buying yourself a lot of firepower, but you're not necessarily taking out your neighbor's house and the people that live across the street from them. Okay, we talked about the option of perhaps using a knife. We talked about loads. We also talked about that this isn't a Glock video, but these are these are at the pyramid of my years of going through pistols. 19 and the 43. Hello. The stuff with what kind of ammo you're using is so important, guys, because especially if you are going to be using expending a lot of rounds real quick, which is probably likely, you're not going to hit your target every time. You know, at least I know when I'm doing it at the range I can't, and under the fog of war, so to speak, I bet I'm going to miss, and I do want to show some responsibility there. So if you're using deer cartridges, if you're using 10 millimeter hollow point stuff like that, you're probably at the overkill range. And I already said what I thought about intermediate cartridges. And again, guys, I'm not saying this doesn't work for home defense. I'm saying it's so much overkill that you don't need. Probably the biggest advantage to something like this, in my opinion, is the amount of rounds you're getting. But come on, let's be honest. If we think we need to be prepared to defend ourselves from a squad of 20, then we're kidding ourselves. We're not going to make it. Anyway, coming back over, I want to talk about the last kind of area of this equipment-wise, and that's lights. I've got several different kinds laying around. The one I just showed you earlier on the Glock 19 is there's, I think, much better options for this kind of light in terms of quality. This is a less than $100 kind of light that is a combination of both a light and a laser. So, you know, it does various things. And but what it does more than anything, besides adding weight to a pistol, it gives away your position, and so you have to assume that the other guy doesn't have a gun because you just told him where to aim. Or you have to assume that the other guy doesn't have night vision goggles, so while you're walking around figuring out what to do, you've already been spotted. The bottom line is you really can't defend yourself in every situation, but this is just my philosophy. I think attaching a light to your weapon and using it pretty much says that I'm ruling out that the other guy isn't going to immediately just fire at that. And again, assuming I don't have night vision, which guess what? I don't. So I'm a much bigger fan of a non-attached light like this. You know, I mean, each one of these, I believe, are about 200 lumens. You get much above that, and you're creating so much brightness that you blind yourself. And especially if you go into a lightly painted small room, it's amazing how you can wash yourself out. But what's nice about this is you can hold this in one hand, you can hold your firearm in the other hand, and it's just not that big of a difference. And you know what? Train one-handed, I guess. In other words, I train for that kind of scenario. So if you're always training with two hands on your firearm, I guess you need a weapons-mounted light. And yes, you can get a much shorter weapons-mounted light. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't uses for weapons-mounted lights. I love this one, for example. Where I live, if somebody's out in front of your street and you believe they're a threat, you legally do not have the right to shoot them. So basically, as isn't the case in most states, if you're involved in anything other than shooting an intruder who's come into your home, you're probably going to spend some time downtown, as they say. And as you know, you can be detained for up to 72 hours without charges while things are sorted out. So that's important to remember as you evaluate what kind of choices you make and what you consider home defense. But I want to be very clear that in this particular video, I am talking specifically about legal home defense scenarios where your home has been invaded. And if we were talking about something else, believe me, boys, I'd have some different weapons choices of longer range and higher power to discuss with you. In terms of my biggest concern on self-defense, I said it earlier, get a dog, have an alarm system, have something, or both, have something that's going to ensure that you get woke up in the middle of the night, because I'm a sound sleeper, I know, and so to count on having something happen that's loud enough that it wakes me up, it might already be too late. So always remember that your safest bet is to do that. Secondly, again, I was showing you firearms that lower power type of scenario. And again, there's going to be people that want to defend their house so bad with their AR-15, but you're probably going to end up in court unless we have some kind of proverbial meltdown in society, zombie apocalypse or something where there's a lot of shooting going on. So just things to remember. Know the laws of your state, because I don't know where you live. It's my job to know the laws of the state where I live. You can find that information certainly just by going into your state's legislative website or doing some searching, and there's other tools available online. I won't Google them for you, but I'll assume you can if you found me. Anyway, just a real quick look at some of the different tools that I have and consider self-defense home weapons, living under the castle doctrine where I do, and would appreciate, obviously, to hear what you guys do. I know I'm going to hear about 9mm being not enough, and other people telling me that, hey, you can get a 5.56 cartridge that is never going to go through drywall. I know that we're going to hear some of that stuff, and that's fine. But wanted to let you a little bit know about my choices. I think we'll have another video down the road where we'll talk about specifically self-defense choices when you're not in your house. You could almost break that down to on your person, concealed carry kind of issues, and talking about your vehicle. So until then, appreciate you tuning in. This is Dr. Drake 63 reminding you, please support the NRA. Please train. Please know how to disassemble, take down, and clean your firearms. Thanks for watching. This is Dr. Drake 63 signing off.